What is good, my people? We are live back on the forecast. Live. Come on and talk to y'all. What's going on? What's going on, Al? How y'all doing, man? Yeah, I just came on to holler at the people. I definitely want to hear from y'all, man. The number right there on the screen, 804-601-4015. Yeah, man. Glad I could come back and talk to y'all, man. I always love talking to the people, man. Before I get started, I know I keep saying, I'm not, I know I keep, saying that I'm, taking care of business and everything, and, I'm dealing with a lot of family issues or whatever. And, so I got to work to take care of a lot of stuff. And, I just put it up there. I don't really like doing stuff like this, but, you know, um, I got to pay for, surgery for a family member. So, making these videos and doing these lives, it takes so much time to do the research, so I try to do what I can, but I at least put a GoFundMe thing so I could, pay for the surgery or whatever, so I could have more time. I know it's hard times right now for everybody, but you know what I'm saying. So I'm trying to free up more time so I could get back to delivering the content like you used to. I know y'all always asking me where am I at. I'm doing a lot of work, and it's a lot of time that goes into these videos and to all of these research. So, I appreciate anything that anybody could put in there, and it's right there in the description, along with the Forecast Radio 24. Make sure y'all subscribe to get the new videos, because I know YouTube does not give out notifications. People get the notifications after the show. People call in after the show when I'm about to get off. A lot of people start joining the live. And this is a main reason why we have to start building our own stuff. And I say it over and over and over. And I'm going to keep on saying it until we start doing it, right? Until we start actually practicing community, because we're never going to get out of this situation until we start practicing unity, right? Because you look on YouTube, you don't even know how many people are watching these videos, because they don't really tell you, because there's a lot of stuff that they don't want us to know. But that's why it's important for us to study our history, because if we stop history from repeating itself over and over, right, then we're right there to destroying the system completely, right? Because most of the laws that's in effect today go back to those very laws, right? And America always tries to make itself like the victim, or like they're not so bad, or like we lost our mind or something. But when we look at history, when you study history, it's like James Baldwin said, you cannot be conscious on any level and be a black person in America and not be infuriated. But the problem is, we are scared to show our fear. We try to say, okay, well, we can't be like that. We have to fit into somebody else's culture. By the way, they don't even fit into their own culture, because the first thing they will do when they don't get their way, right? And that's if they have to pay an extra tax that they're supposed to pay, right? They'll be ready to fight back and swing. But if we say, hey, we don't think black people should be killed, we got to apologize for saying that and say, well, yeah, of course I believe everybody should be safe, right? But we can't even say, no, I should be safe, because we are the ones that are being hunted down. And that's because we don't really understand their laws, how they use their codes. And I say it over and over, right? The Dred Scott decision, you can't show me a law or a ruling that overturned the Dred Scott decision, right? And before the Dred Scott decision, right, there was another case in Boston where this brother, he was the first person to challenge segregated schools, right? But it's the fact that the way they word their laws, right, they always use deception. They have to use deception. They always gang up in numbers, but deception is key for them, right? That's why they word their laws like you look at the 14th Amendment. Any person born into United States is a citizen, but are you considered a person? Because if you were, would they have to vote on the Voters' Right Act every 25 years? And citizens already have the right to vote. They don't need the Voters' Right Act to enforce their right to vote. But that's the problem, because laws like the fugitive slave laws, those are the things that fit us the most. And this is the issue with America since the very first president, who promised black people freedom and turned around and passed the Fugitive Slave Act, which put the black people who are already free and in more danger. And that's another reason why you can't, when people try to bring up numbers and statistics and all of this stuff, because people will love to say, well, look how many free black people it was in America. Well, free black people was getting kidnapped and taken every single day, right? The movie 12 Years a Slave is a good example, right? They just kidnapped that brother. Now, see, the thing that set the mindset of most, especially the white citizens, and these fugitive slave laws, they required white citizens to be on the slave patrol, the paddy rollers, right? It was these Karens out here, right? They were told to go harass black people, right? They could arrest them or do whatever they wanted to do. And, they try to make all of these quote unquote liberal states, the free states in the North, seem like they were doing something with these personal liberty laws, which was supposed to make it more difficult to take a black person out of the state, because they were kidnapping children so much they had to pass laws to stop them from doing it. But really, these laws they passed were for white people, so they didn't have to be on the slave patrol. Because what the Fugitive Slave Act did was required white citizens to join the slave patrol. Now, we see today a lot of them probably, enjoy doing that kind of stuff. But, the law said they could literally walk up to a black person and accuse them of anything, and the black person had no rights, couldn't testify in court, couldn't do anything. And with no evidence, they would just be shipped into slavery. And just like today, in the courts, the judges were being paid more to say that a black person was a runaway. Judges were paid, and this was back in the 1800s, but judges were paid $10 for every person that they said was a runaway and sent into slavery, but they were paid $5 for any black person they let go. Now that seems, very similar to how the jails today have to keep a certain number of black people. Well, not necessarily black people. That's just the kind of people they use to fill up prisons. Now, this law, this law was because, this slave hunter went up to a free state and, kidnapped this black woman and her daughter and said she was a runaway. Now, he didn't have any evidence, so much so that even back then, the state said he didn't have enough evidence, and they released her. Now, when they did release her, well, when they said he was supposed to release her, he ended up kidnapping her and her daughter anyway. And when he got in trouble for it, the federal government stepped in and said any laws that the state has is overridden by federal law, and that any slave catcher can go into any place and take any black person that they want. Now, we wonder where they get this arrogance from, where they can just walk up to us and say anything. But this is a mindset that has been bred into us, not just into us, but into them. White supremacy is a system, is a legacy that's passed down from generation to generation. But on our behalf, the struggle to destroy the system is passed down to us, and we have to do our part to destroy it. But the first part of that is understanding where we come from. Now, one of the people, like one of the first people that was charged, under the Fugitive Slave Act, he was accused of being a runaway. But, the brother was well known and everybody knew he wasn't a runaway, but he was convicted anyway. So, the people who were far more on code than we are today, because they didn't have the illusion of inclusion, right? They were getting tired of their people being kidnapped and shipped into slavery. So, this brother, he decided to shoot back. And I can't really remember his name. It'll come to me. But, this brother was, tired of it. And he did what he had to do. Yeah, a brother named William Parker. Right. And this brother was a runaway himself. And he was helping other people get away. And so, the slave catcher went to his home looking for the other people. So when they rung the bell, a bunch of, other slave catchers came running with weapons, but so did the black people in the community. They came to protect each other. And, this brother, William Parker, formed his own self-defense group, right? And he had about 100 members, right? And they all showed up. And, they ended up shooting and killing the slave hunter that came there looking for him. And they ended up shooting his son too, even though his son survived. Right. But, of course, over the next few days after that, white mobs continued to attack the black community. But that brother and the four, quote unquote runaways they were looking for had already left. Frederick Douglass helped them escape to America. To Canada. But, they still ended up charging the black people in the community, right? Just because a few of them got on code. Now, imagine if way more of us start getting on code. Imagine if way more of us start doing what we have to do. What's going on, black man? But, the things that, our people did to get out of the system, right? If we knew that, we wouldn't be fighting so hard to try to stay in this system. thinking that we are a part of it, right? This one brother who, was a slave or whatever, but he paid the owner of his wife and children not to not to sell them, right? He was a carpenter, so he made some money on the side, and he paid him not to sell them. But then one day he was coming home, or he worked for a factory or something. But one day he came back, and of course he was betrayed, and they sold his wife and children. Now this brother ended up mailing himself to the north, to a free state, right? He put himself in a package and mailed himself. He almost died being shipped up north. But they were doing anything they could to get out of the system. But we don't hear about cases like this. And another case, this black couple. Well, the woman, she was a biracial, and she was a product of the slave owner raping her mother, right? Because they enslave their own children. This is the mentality of the system that we're trying to fit into. They would enslave their own children. But when she ended up marrying a black man, just because she could pass for white, right? She dressed up like a young white man, cut her hair off, cut her hair down, because even white women couldn't really travel back then. But she cut her hair off to look like a man, like she was traveling with her slave, but she acted like she was deaf. They wrapped her up in bandages like she was burnt. You know, they did everything they could not to talk to anybody. And they literally made it. But they ended up getting famous telling their story. So many slave hunters came there looking for them. They were forced to move back to Canada. And then you have, people like Harriet Tubman, who was one of the main reasons why they stepped up the Fugitive Slave Act and, took it to another level in 1850. And how she kept going back and doing what she did and got so nice at it, she knew exactly what to do and saved so many people. And like she said, she could have saved so many more if only they knew they were slaves. Now, if they didn't know they were slaves when they were literally chattel slaves, imagine what's going on in the heads of our people right now. They didn't have the illusion of inclusion like we have the illusion of inclusion. But it's stuff like this about our history and the history in America that we have to learn, because we don't even realize we are the only group that has ever pulled ourselves up by our own bootstraps in America, coming from the worst position. And they hated that so much that they decided they were going to attack it by any means. Of course, with violence, just flat out burning it down. But again, they also did things with the law. They passed the Highway Act where they can drive a highway right through the most financially successful part of your community, just so it is crippled. And there's a reason why they do that, and they continue to do all of that. And there's a reason why every single person in America who stood up for black people and was on a mission to stand up for black people, right? They not only tried to kill them, they erased them from the history books. But this is why it's important that we write our own history books. And again, that's one of the things that I'm working on, and why it's taking me so long, because working on this book to show everything from the beginning of white supremacy to the day, it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort. And it takes a lot of time to make these videos, and I'll repeat it. And the reason why I haven't been doing as many lives and making as many videos as I want is because I've been having to do a lot of extra work to pay for a surgery that a close loved one of mine has to have. And like I said, I don't really like doing it, but it's really hard to get that money. Everybody is struggling right now. But if anybody does want to contribute or whatever, the GoFundMe is in the description right there. I appreciate it. And of course, the email and the channel, the Forecast Radio 24. You wanted to subscribe, because I'm about to start working on the next video now. But it's the fact that we're living in a time where there is a pandemic, right? Where people are supposed to be 6 feet apart, and we still see constant videos of young black men being choked out, black women being slammed, or just flat out shot and killed. In the middle of a pandemic, you are still target number one. You are still the biggest threat to the safety of not only America, but the system of white supremacy. Because, even though Manifest Destiny was a white American concept, that is a global European concept. They feel like whatever is yours belongs to them, and they can take whatever it is they want to take. Because to them, it's theirs to be had, right? God gave them the right. Now, coincidentally, a lot of us pray to the same God that gave them all of this off of our blood, sweat, and tears, and violence against us. We're praying to the same God that gave them this manifest destiny idea. But this is why we have to start looking into the mental health in the black community. But first of all, it's hard to even get to that point when we aren't pooling our resources so we can build organizations for that purpose, where we're sending our kids to school to train to be doctors, lawyers, psychiatrists, whatever, the things that we need in our community. Because we're not community minded, we're Americanized. Now, America has always kept its word about what they said they were going to do. Now, what America said they were going to do is to keep us in perpetual slavery. And we think that since it's not the same as it was in 1820, that we aren't slaves in 2020. But when you go somewhere working hard and other people do less than you, making more money than you, and the government then takes your money from you, that is called slavery, when in reality, even though we couldn't even demand to be labeled a person, right? We couldn't demand that the Dred Scott case be overturned. So I know we aren't going to demand stuff like, right, us not paying taxes to America because America has taken everything. When you talk about reparations, they try to make it a joke and say, well, it's just a check you're going to send to every black person and they just going to give it back. Well, number one, even if they did, that's theirs to do. But number two, especially for the black people saying this, because they're supposed to say it, they're your enemy. But for the black people agreeing with that, first of all, you're talking about yourself. But we have to have more faith in each other. And of course, we can do our own thing. And right now, we can all put our money together and create an organization and elect, since we want to vote so badly, elect the most successful black business people, the most successful black business owners, business people, whatever, put them on a committee strictly to fund and help grow black businesses. And we can do that right now. And we can all contribute to it, whether it be $1 or $1,000,000. But when we say stuff like, well, if we got reparations, we just spend it on rims or something, right? First of all, you're speaking from a white supremacist mindset yourself. But we as a community do need financial education. We need education in all areas, but we need to be educating ourselves, because we don't even stop to think that we are sending our kids to the same people who told who literally only purpose was to make us slaves, to make us bow down to the system, right? And the question in every election is still is, what are we going to do with the Negroes? And if you are a citizen, why do you have a separate question from the questions about Americans? And that's because, right, they from the very beginning said only white persons could be citizens of America, right? The judge in the Dred Scott case, he said Negroes are not included and were never intended to be included under the word citizens in the Constitution. He said Negroes couldn't claim any rights, privileges, or protections for American citizens. And he said that was based off laws dating back from the Constitution. And he said there was a perpetual and impossible barrier intended to be between the white race and the one they reduced to slavery. Right? They felt that Negroes were beings of an inferior order altogether and unfit to associate with the white race. Right? And of course, he said that we have no rights that the white man is bound to respect. Right now, he said that we were never intended to be citizens, and there was always intended to be a perpetual and impossible barrier between them and us. And when somebody tells you who they are, you have to believe them. But we're that group of people, right, that say, well, I know they say they don't love me, and I know they smack me up a little bit, and I know they beat me up and take all of my stuff. But I know if I love them hard enough, then they'll change. But, that's the mindset that was beaten into us. And yeah, it is very difficult to change the minds of especially adults. but it can be done. But that's only done through example, by showing them. But America understood that it's easier to make a slave, make a child a slave, than a person who has known freedom. And the fact is, in America, we have never actually known freedom. And by law, slavery was never outlawed in America, because a lot of times we always pay attention to the part of the 13th Amendment that says, except if convicted of a crime. They didn't say who gets to make the crime, who gets to make the law, who gets to make the punishment, and if that punishment will be equal. It just said if you was convicted of a crime, you can be a slave. You will be a slave. But the other part of that says involuntary servitude. Now they can put you in a position where you have to voluntarily serve them, right? Then of course it's legal, right? If they charge you for water and lights and air and food and anything that'll poison you, right? Then of course you have to voluntarily give your service to do that. But even when we have to be in that position where we have to work to feed our families, we have to then have that energy to still do the work that we have to do to get out of the system, because police brutality is just one symptom of white supremacy, and a symptom that needs to be destroyed. But we should be angry that they control the food we eat, they control everything. Say what? 1850 says Freeman. Who am I talking about? Not sure what you're referring to though, JB. But of course, police brutality got to stop. But we should be mad that they can tell us what to do with our children. We should be mad that they may be about to tell us we can't go back into society unless we get their shot. Right now, this is a point in history where we can do what we have to do to destroy this system, but not only destroy this system, build our own system. Because until you have a nation, army, a government to protect you, then anybody can do stuff to you to harm you and not face consequences. Right? We get the rap of thugs and gangsters, but one cop can walk into a crowd of thugs, quote unquote thugs and gangsters, and violate any one of them. And most times, a lot of times, all we do is just pull out our phone and say, this ain't right, this ain't right. But we don't control no court system or no punishment system where we can stop it from happening. And by the way, you can call in. The number is 804-601-4015. I know a lot of people don't really get the notifications and watch until it's over. But I don't want to just go on a rant the whole time. So if anybody want to call in, you can call in. But like I said, we have to be careful with the wording, because they will use any and everything to justify their position. Right? And we have to watch out for the talking points, because it's always about deception. Like when you hear talking about black on black crime, you have to watch how they do that. Not all slaves, some own indentured servants. How did who get power? I'm not sure who you saying who got. How did who got power? Or how did who get power? But um, but anyway, we gotta learn from the cycle, right? Because we think that we have to convince a group who created the system how the system works. They understand the system better than we do. But that's the part of that unapologetic nature that we have to have. We can't apologize for what we say, right? And you saw how quickly things change. How did white people get power? They got power because they got gunpowder, but most importantly, what they did was use deception because when they went to these places, they used fuse that neighboring tribes may have had, but once they introduced the gunpowder and start kidnapping people, right? They got got us to start fighting each other, right? They got us fighting today, fighting each other over a block. Well, not so much today, but they have us fighting each other over a block that neither one of us own, that they own. And then they lock us up for it, right? They made sure that they destroyed our mental capacity as much as they could, from reading to everything. They made sure that we were in a subservient position. But what we have to realize is that whole time, we never stopped fighting back. Now they erased all of that part, all of that stuff from history, because I always tell the story about Madison Washington, how that brother escapes from slavery twice. He went back into slavery in Richmond, Virginia, to go get his wife, and he and freed 18 other people. Well, after he got caught and was sent to he got sent to New Orleans to be enslaved, but he killed all of the people on board and they sailed to freedom. Now, they got power because we have been so trusting from day one, from the first time that we've seen them. We've welcomed them with open arms. And to this day, we forgive them, right? They can kill one of our family members and we'll go into court crying and ask them for a hug. But if I step on your shoe, then you got to punch me in my face. But all of that is psychological conditioning. They, of course, they use weapons, but their main weapon is the deception. They didn't just send militaries in, they sent in missionaries, right? You can look at Haiti, right? When the Haitians were winning at first, the French and Bonaparte didn't think anything about the Haitians, thought they could just be wiped out. But despite them having the weapons, they knew the terrain but most importantly, they had the unity, right? The mulatto class, the black class, everybody understood that Bonaparte didn't care who you were. And when he started losing, he tried to send one of his, most quote unquote fierce generals, the dude Leclerc. But Dessalines crushed them both. Now, the problem is Toussaint, he thought he could be a part of the French. He thought he fit in with the French. And I don't know how many treaties, how many times they got to violate. Today, we just stopped asking. We can say, well, we'll wait for 4 years. We just got to get Trump out of office. We ain't even got to pretend like they're going to lie to and give us false hope and promises. Right? We don't even need that stuff no more. But back then, they had to use that all the time. Because despite them having bigger armies, and it wasn't just in Haiti, it was in America, and most of the revolts that were successful, they had to, under false pretenses, agree. Yeah, but yeah, well, we didn't create the system. Once people start agreeing about black and white, that then it's official. And by the way, JB, you can call in anytime you want if you think I don't read real sources or whatever. And you can say, yeah, we invented gunpowder, but we ain't using gunpowder to kill whole nations of people. That's the issue with the gunpowder. We didn't put it into cannons and kill hundreds of people. But that's why I said it wasn't just that. It was the deception, because that's what I've been talking about this whole time. Because that's what they still use, is deception. Now, the problem is, right? Yeah, race is a human concept, but the thing is, it has been constructed, right? And people agreed on it, and people have died behind it. And until we start saying, okay, yeah, that is a concept that we're gonna have to start defending ourselves from, then we're gonna be in trouble, right? Because everybody else is living by that system, right? It ain't America. You can go anywhere in the world. The darker you are, the worse it is for you. And that's a part of the whole Haitian thing too with it, right? Because after they crushed Dessalines and this huge army who did have more guns, right? But they knew the terrain, they knew stuff. And that's another thing they did. They made it illegal for us to even learn how to use plants. Why? Because you were black. And you would use that to poison them. You would use your knowledge of nature to hurt them. So they would have to take that knowledge away from you. Right? But once Haiti got France up out of there, because they like to say they killed all white people, they didn't. They just killed slave owners if they didn't leave, and they gave them a chance to leave. But it was because the mulattoes felt like they were better than the dark-skinned people, because race is a concept that people have agreed on and have put into practice. You can say anything ain't real. That ain't nothing but an excuse. And it's nothing but fear of the situation that you're really in. But once they start passing laws based off you being a Negro, then yeah, it's a real concept. And these slave codes are a real concept. And that's why we have to understand history and our heroes. We can't let other people keep telling us who our heroes are, right? Because they condemn people like Khalid Muhammad, who said we who only spoke up for black people. But they put people like George Washington on the face of a mountain when we're only telling you the same thing that George Washington said. Because guess what? There's no such thing as American. There's no such thing as British. It's all concepts. But that's the issue. We have, as a people, have to find a concept that we agree on. And if we can't agree on the concept of not having our children choked out in the middle of the street, then I don't know what it's going to take. And that's the whole purpose of the Forecast Radio and the videos that I make. Now, I'm pretty sure this JB dude is just trying to troll or whatever, but I definitely want him to call in. But I want all of y'all to call in. Anybody who got anything to say. I've been on here for a little minute, but I know they make sure that our content isn't spread like that. And I'm just not just talking about me, but creators for the upliftment of black people. Really, anybody against their system, unapproved by them. But for our purposes, we're only focused on uplifting what ourselves, because you can't help one of the poor people if you wanted them, like the saying goes. So how do we keep fighting for every other group when we're still under every other group? Especially when every other group would turn around and use shitting on you to earn their card, their white card. And one of my favorite things to do is destroy their talking points, because they've been destroyed. They're not that clever. But at the end of the day, we do have to realize that we are all we got. And until we realize that, and until we do what we have to do, then we're going to get the same results over and over and over. Now, I appreciate everybody for coming through. Anybody want to call in, you could call in, but I'm about to get off now. But I appreciate everybody for coming in, man. And if anybody can and does help with whatever they can, man, I appreciate it. The details is in the description, the GoFundMe and the backup channel, the Forecast Radio 24. There will be a new video coming up in a few days. I'm starting to work on it right now. That's why I'm not gonna be on here too much longer. I definitely want to come back on here and do more lives and make sure I talk to the people and get more of a routine, because I know YouTube isn't gonna show the people the notifications. People tell me, man, I got it 2 days later. They didn't get it at all. They are making sure that they control speech, because the internet changed the game. It leveled the playing field. They control the propaganda. But that's why it's important that we do have our own media, that we control our own talking points, right? And destroy everybody else's who stands against us. Because it's time for us to stop apologizing for who we are. Everything in this universe wants to survive. And we have to stop being scary and on this quote unquote all lives matter. Because every other life don't seem to care too much about yours. And there's no telling how many people are watching our videos or seeing what we're doing. That's why we have to keep doing what we have to do. Because at the end of the day, they can't stop us. One person is not the Black Messiah. The Black Messiah is Black unity, right? Hopefully, the energy of the ancestors come through me and teach us what we need to know, and comes through all of us, because so many people have given everything to get us in this position. 100 years ago, I would have been lynched for saying half of the stuff I said, right? People have been lynched just for looking at a white person in the eyes. And so many people have given everything to change that. And as long as we keep it alive and we do what we have to do, then we will be successful. And it starts with reprogramming our minds, stop being so scared, then teach our children and leave them in a position, because we are the generation that will destroy the system. And we will leave our next generation, our children, in a position where they could be successful, where they can build their own nation. Right now is the time that we take advantage of what's going on in the world, like every other group who is trying to make their move. Now it's time for us to get established. Because believe me, when we start getting on code and amongst ourselves and get rid of that illusion of inclusion, the rest of the world is going to be afraid, because the system of white supremacy is defined by Black inferiority. If you no longer accept the position of inferior, then what is white supremacy? But anyway, man, I appreciate all of y'all for watching, for coming through, man. Much respect, man. And as always, man, we have got to start standing for something, or we're gonna keep falling for anything.